What's up guys, Josh Mosman here from Motocross Action magazine, and in today's video we have the 2022 Yamaha YZ250 Two Stroke. It is new, it is updated, and Yamaha has done something very incredible with their two-stroke model range. These bikes have been the same for a long time. The frame, the engine, the core of this model has stayed the same for over like 16 years or something crazy like that. But Yamaha, it seems like it just keeps getting better and better with years and years. So the suspension on this bike, the Kayaba SSS forks, everybody loves. Everybody loves the frame and just the easy to ride and smooth power of the two-stroke engine. So I'm super excited to ride this bike. It's got updated bodywork, updated suspension settings, updated intake in the airbox, new wheels, an updated chain, and a few other small updates that are supposed to refine this bike, make it a little bit more modern, and keep up, hopefully, with the 250 Two Stroke from KTM. So we're really excited to ride this bike today and tell you guys all about the updates and how it works on the track in this video. All right guys, it's been a long day here at Glen Helen riding the 2022 YZ250 Two Stroke from Yamaha. Let's talk a little bit more about the details that Yamaha changed for the new model year. The big change and the most obvious one is obviously the bodywork. This thing looks totally new, a lot more modern and a lot more racy now than it did prior. This bike has been very similar since 2005. 2005 is when the Yamaha YZ250 got the plug-and-play aluminum frame. That frame has stayed the same from 2005 until today. Most people carbon date this bike all the way back to 2006, 1 year later, because that's when it got the legendary Kayaba SSS forks. These forks are forks that everybody loves, and the actual internals and the science behind those forks has stayed the same since 2006. So very impressive the Yamaha's been able to keep going with that same fork technology, and it really shows how groundbreaking it was back in 2006 because people still love it. Overall, bodywork, big upgrade for this bike. It was pretty much the same bodywork from 2005. I believe it was 2018 is when we got the new restyled YZ250 bodywork. That made the shrouds a little bit sharper, a little bit more racy looking, but not quite like what we see today. The new bodywork here is a big upgrade. And so this bike got a lot stiffer suspension. They went up on the spring rate on the forks. They also went up on the spring rate on the shock, one spring rate front and rear. So it makes it ride a lot taller and feel a little bit better for guys that are heavier. Last year's suspension on the YZ250 was very plush, very soft. And if you're gonna race it, you definitely needed to take it to your local suspension dealer and get it stiffened up for you. So spring rate is stiffer on this bike. The valving is also stiffer, so you're able to go faster. It's gonna hold up a lot more. That's another huge, real performance enhancing upgrade. Another change is the intake is a little bit straighter. You're getting a little more air into the airbox on the new YZ250. That's really the only performance enhancing upgrade that the new bike has. The engine, the frame are the same as they were and the same as they have been for a long time. But the intake and with the seat and subframe, you're supposed to get a little more air into that airbox. As we talk about all the time with KTM, Husky, GASGAS, and some of the other models, you're always looking to get more air into the engine. So engines, they need fuel and they need air and they need a spark to combust and to make power at the rear wheel. That's why we always try to get more air into the airbox, and that's something that Yamaha did. So that's really the only upgrade that Yamaha made to the engine on this bike. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. A little more on the bodywork changes. You won't be able to put this same plastic setup on your YZ250 if it's a 21, 20, all the way back to 2005. Unfortunately, I know a lot of people already want to do that. Sadly, you won't be able to do that. So why? The subframe is updated to fit the new seat and to add a little more air into the airbox. The seat is also different. It's got a different shape and a different mounting point with only one bolt now rather than two. The shrouds and the fuel tank are also different as well. So the fuel tank is skinnier, the shrouds are skinnier as well. So they're 36 millimeters skinnier at the front of the shrouds, and they're 7 millimeters skinnier at the middle of the shrouds as well. So the new fuel tank on the YZ250 is definitely skinnier. Diving into the details on the seat, they tried to make it a little more racy. So last year's YZ250 and the model years prior to this one, the seat kind of dug down a little bit more and you were kind of sitting into it. Where now the new YZ250 for 2022 is a lot more of a flat seat. So the front of the seat is 6 millimeters lower. The middle of the seat is 5 millimeters higher. So basically making the seat a lot more flat, making you sit on top of the bike rather than sitting into the bike. And with the flatter seat, the shrouds and just the bodywork across the sides are flatter, skinnier and smoother now, so that you won't be having any hard time with your boots hanging up on the shrouds or have any complications there. The bike is supposed to be a lot easier moving front to back now. As for the rest of the updates, the new Yamaha 250 comes with Dunlop MX33 tires, so we love and appreciate those. Also, the brakes have been updated to match the YZ250 and YZ450 models, which got lighter calipers, lighter hangers to reduce weight kind of over at the front and rear wheels. Also got stronger pistons, larger brake pad material, more friction plates basically, or more friction material on the brake pads to increase stopping power front and rear. So the Yamaha YZ250 got quite a few updates. It's got the bodywork, it's got the new intake, a little more air going into the air box, updated brakes, new tires from Dunlop. It also got an updated sprocket and chain. So the sprocket and chain are both lighter now. One thing that didn't carry over from the 254 stroke, 454 stroke to the YZ250 is the triple clamps. So 4 strokes, you have 4 options for moving your handlebars front and rear. On the YZ250, with the top triple clamp is the same as it was before, and you only have 2 options for moving your handlebars forward and back. Also, the front number plate matches the 4 strokes as well, and that's about it for the parts that go between the 2-stroke and the 4-stroke line. Now let's get into the exciting stuff. How did this bike feel on the track, and what is it like to ride the all-new, or really just pretty new, Yamaha YZ250 Two Stroke? So looking at a little overview about this bike has been a staple in the motocross community. Thank you to Yamaha for continuing to produce 2-strokes. Without Yamaha, KTM, GASGAS would have no competition in this range, as the Honda, Kawasaki, and Suzuki brands have left the 2-strokes high and dry. So we always appreciate the Yamaha YZ250 Two Stroke, and we're glad to see Yamaha continuing to press forward, and really surprised to see updates to this model for the new model season. So the engine has always been a strong one on the YZ250. It's never been as fast as the KTM 250 Two Stroke, but it's always been easy to ride, and it's been snappy and great off the bottom end. So now that there aren't really any changes besides that extra air going into the air box, the YZ250 still has that same character on the bottom end. This bike is easy to roll into the throttle and easy to get into the power band. It also carries high into the RPMs better than the KTM 250 Two Stroke. But if you really want to compare and figure out what's the difference between this bike and the KTM 250 Two Stroke, well, we did have that bike here today. We rode back to back a little bit. The KTM is a lot stronger in the mid-range, and you have to shift a lot more on the KTM, where the YZ250 is much easier to ride. It's easier to get into the power, and you don't have to shift as much. You can leave it in second or leave it in third much longer on the YZ250 and just carry that up the hills here at Glen Helen. So KTM is about a horsepower faster on peak, but where it really makes its power is in the mid-range. That's where the KTM really pulls away from the YZ250. Where the YZ250 shines, great off the bottom end, snappy, easy to get out of the corners. You don't have to rev it or use the clutch a lot to get out of corners. It's not as strong in the mid-range, and then it picks up again in the higher RPM range where the YZ250 continues to pull. So looking at the 250 class, the 250 Two-Stroke class really, the YZ250, we've always talked about it as a great bike to ride, and the KTM a great bike to race, and it still is the same today. So one thing that did make the YZ250 better for racing is the new suspension. Now in stock form, the YZ250 has much stiffer suspension that's a lot more responsive, a lot more racy. It's not having as much pitching front to rear when you're getting on the brakes or when you're getting on the gas. This new suspension setting is a lot stiffer, and that's something that I noticed right off the bat. We also had our 2021 YZ250 that we were riding back to back with this model today. Suspension is a lot softer on that model. It's something that we've always liked, but now the YZ250 for 2022 is a lot more race ready with stiffer suspension settings coming right off the dealer showroom floor. Explaining how the suspension worked for me today at Glen Helen, we rode the bike a lot on the REM track this morning, which drifting around, having a good time shooting photos and videos. Then we went out to the main track here at Glen Helen, did a lot of our testing where the track was a lot rougher. It was good today, got some good ruts in the corners and some good braking bumps coming into the corners as well. So starting with the stock suspension, talked to the Yamaha guys, Steven Tokarski, Travis Preston, both former AMA pros and great riders and great test riders. They said that they like to go a little bit stiffer on the fork and shock shock. They went in on the high speed on the shock, just 1/8 of a turn. Went a little bit slower on compression. They went in on compression on the forks as well. So they like to make this bike a little bit stiffer. I tried their setting. I wasn't really a huge fan. It was a little bit too stiff for me, and I expected that. The stock setting was a little bit too stiff for me. So trying their settings was even stiffer, and it was surprising. Going back out, I went a couple clicks softer than stock. That was actually better for me. So where I ended up today was 1 click softer on the fork compression and also 1 click softer on the low speed compression on the shock. Very close to stock settings for me. I was very surprised how much of a difference 1 click made. For me, being an MXA test rider, I've been doing this for 3 years now. I've ridden hundreds of bikes, lots of stock bikes, a couple factory bikes, a lot of different things here. So as I grow and as I continue testing here with Motocross Action, my base is growing. Before, it was a little bit harder for me to tell with 1 click. I think with this YZ250, this chassis, how it responds to clicks is very sensitive, and 1 click was a big difference for me today. I tried going even softer. I said, okay, if I like 1 click softer, should I go maybe 3 or 4 or 5 clicks softer? I tried each of those settings. It was too soft for me. 1 click softer, fork and shock is where I landed at today for the YZ250, and I was impressed with it. It was a lot more racy and a lot more of a holdup than the YZ250 had in years prior. The specs for the suspension on this bike, it's running a 4.4 spring rate in the forks. That's up 1 spring rate from 4.3 that it had last year, so forks are holding up a little stronger. Also in the rear has a 5.0 going up from a 48 last year, so 1 spring rate up front and rear. Spring rate, really that's tailored to the rider's weight more so than the skill level, so a spring rate up will make this bike fit a little bit better off the showroom floor for somebody that's a little heavier. I weigh in at 175, and it was pretty easy for us to find the correct sag for me. Today we ran the sag at 104, that's what Yamaha recommended, and we're always around the 105 range. MXA Wrecking Crew, that's kind of our base setting where we start out with most bikes. And then the valving, that's really focused on how fast of a rider you are. So spring rate is holding you up, keeping you in the correct position within the fork travel. The valving is really what's slowing down the oil as it's moving through the forks, as it's moving through the shock, and the valving is what's controlling how fast you compress. So stiffer valving will compress slower, you can go faster into bumps and you won't be bottoming out. Softer valving obviously will move more, and that's what you're doing with the clickers. So when you're adjusting the clickers on the fork and shock, you're closing and opening valves and allowing oil to flow through faster by opening and going clicks out. And then when you add clicks, clicking in, that's closing that oil bleed hole and making the forks a little bit stiffer. So today I was very impressed that it was only 1 click away from making it more comfortable for me, but we're also excited to continue to ride this bike and get some more test riders than just me to give their opinion on it, and we'll have a full article in Motocross Action magazine talking all about this updated model. Diving into the rest of the updates, really the brakes. The new brakes on the Yamaha YZ250, I would say are a little bit better. Comparing it back to back with last year's model, they are a little bit stronger, but it's not really a night and day change that is groundbreaking or that's gonna beat the KTM. KTM has Brembo brakes, steel braided brake lines, and those things have been the best in the class for a long time. These ones are getting closer, but still not there with competing with the Brembo brakes that KTM has. So because the bike is lighter, this bike weighs in at 212 pounds. That is lighter than the YZ450. It's actually 19 pounds lighter than the 238 pound YZ450. So lightness of this bike and the weight of it definitely help the brakes work better. Overall, they're not groundbreaking improvements that are really gonna battle with the KTM in that department. All right guys, so that's basically all we know about the 2022 Yamaha YZ250 Two Stroke. It was a lot of fun riding this new model today. I keep wanting to say all new because it looks so updated from the outside, but frame, engine are still really exactly the same. Suspension and the bodywork, that's where the upgrades came for Yamaha in 2022 on the YZ250. The YZ125, now that bike is all new. It did get updates to the engine, and we're very excited to get our hands on that. It sounds like we got a couple more weeks, maybe about a month, until we'll be riding the 2022 YZ125. Really looking forward to that bike. Also looking forward to putting more time on this one and comparing it with some of the other models. So thank you guys for tuning into this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions about this bike, leave a comment down below the video. Let us know what you guys think and what you guys are interested in knowing about it. We'll try to get back to you guys as quickly as we can. as always, motocrossactionmag.com. We're continuing to throw up articles up there, videos, product tests, bike tests, shootouts, and more. So we got all the latest news going on in the industry as well. So check us out, motocrossactionmag.com. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, Motocross Action Magazine. Click the subscribe button and you'll stay up to date with the latest videos that we got coming there. And if you have some more time now, you can click the thumbnails here to see some of our more recent videos.